Hey everybody, Charlie here from Epic Dice Studio. It's the end of 2017 and 2018 is right around the corner. Thanks to it being the holiday season, I've had some hard times trying to get people, a couple of my friends to come over to get a game in. A lot of personal plans that interfere in the idea of playing a game. Sad Charlie. But I decided to make a video near the end of the year. I had some random thoughts that I thought I'd share with my two of my favorite universes that I'm involved in. There are no right or wrong answers to these thoughts. I'm going to basically give you some questions that I thought of that I was looking to get some kind of feedback. Now, I know some of these questions may have actual answers from either other books, other forms of information that are out there, but I'm not looking for a right or wrong answer. What I'm looking for is just the idea to get thinking. The idea of, okay, if there is an actual right answer or someone actually put out a published answer to this, here are some other ideas that instead of, so-and-so writing about it like this, here's another thought, or here's maybe another way to go with it to think about it. The two universes I want to talk about are 40K and Star Wars. And I'm going to start off with my thoughts on some random thoughts about 40K. Okay, random thought number one. If there were a 40K end times, who do you think would be left over after the dust settles? So, in my opinion, since now I was never a big fantasy player, I currently don't play Age of Sigmar, although I love the model. Okay, sneezing fit over with. Like I said, I was never into fantasy, and while I like the models for Age of Sigmar, I don't play it. But at the end of Warhammer Fantasy Battle, Chaos won. Chaos devastated everything. So I think that in the 40K version, the same thing needs to happen. I think Chaos needs to completely obliterate the Imperium of Man and take anything that they can along with it. I would believe that the Emperor shows up through whatever means. Either he's reborn as the Star Child, or they sacrifice millions upon millions of Psykers and just rejuvenate the Emperor, whatever. However, the Emperor somehow shows up, and they're bringing back some of the Primarchs now, so the Demon Primarchs and the remaining living Primarchs duke it out, kill each other in various ways. The Emperor the Chaos comes and essentially destroys the Imperium. The Emperor has some kind of bargain with the All God, or if there's a power bigger than the four current Chaos Gods, the Emperor somehow drives a bargain to basically say, yes, the Imperium of Man will be wiped out, but you cannot rule, or whatever. But yeah, I think the Imperium and Chaos basically go boom, psh, and then get scattered and are no longer in existence. And as far as the other races, the universe itself is huge. Meaning an actual universe, not the 40K universe. I just mean in general, with our current knowledge in real world of what space is. Space is huge. I think that there would probably still be Tyranids somewhere. I don't necessarily think it would be like a gigantic high fleet, but I think that someplace, somewhere, there would be a planet that would not be as devastated. And on said planet, there could potentially be Tyranids that were infesting it or whatever, and it just manages to survive the cataclysm better than other planets. Same thing for orcs, because orcs were, if I remember, the last fluff that I read on orcs were that they were kind of they were a spore, like a fungus. So every time an orc died, as its body decomposed, it would give off these spores that would basically repopulate this planet with orcish potential. And I would think the same way for orcs, that the orcs would eventually, they would get, anything that's happening in the main section of space around the Imperium, those orcs or whatever would get blown to pieces, but there would still be planets somewhere that would have some kind of orcish spores. I I would think that tomb worlds for the Necrons that were close to the center of the blast destroyed. But there's got to be other planets farther out from the cataclysm that could potentially, same thing, could potentially still survive. I think the Tau, gone. Mechanicum, gone, because they're part of the Imperium. Maybe a Space Marine or two from various chapters. I wouldn't want to go specific, but I think that there's got to be a Space Marine and maybe a Chaos Space Marine or somewhere, basically going, yay. The regular Space Marine is like, oh, my Imperium is gone. I'm going to go take care of some people because I'm a Space Marine. I'm a good guy. Quote unquote good guy. There are probably some beings, lesser beings than I, and I will look to try to help them. And the Chaos Space Marine from whatever faction you want would basically go, hey, we won! I wonder if there's any survivors I can go torture. Excuse me. They would basically still stick to some form of idiom that they had. The Eldar, I actually think the Eldar would die. I think they would finally die, but I think it would be great if they were like, Slaanesh, hey bitch, we're taking you with us. And the Eldar finally die, but they take Slaanesh down with them. So, that'd be part of the big great war before the Emperor, fights the All God or whatever you want to call it. At some point, the Eldar combined with the Dark Eldar, the Inari, just the whole Space Elves races come together and they take out Slaanesh. Done. What else is there? Necrons. Yeah, I already talked about Necrons. Tyranids. Did I miss anyone? I don't think I missed anyone. But yeah, and the reason why I didn't like the people on the forum was basically saying plot armor. And I'm like, I don't care about plot armor. I wanted to have just an honest discussion. And it's a fun discussion. Don't take these thoughts too seriously. I sure as shit don't. Jumping on top of that, end time question. So, the Necrons, in their fluff, made a deal with the devil, or the Catan, or whatever, to become immortal, and then they became the robots. And now, time passed, they fought against the Catan and won, still as robots, and now the higher-ups in the Necrons are looking to go back to normal, trying to become back to regular beings of whatever they were. After the end times, what do they look to in order to be coming back to normal? So based on my opinions, does that mean if there's orcs still laying around, orc spores somewhere? I don't know enough of the fluff here, so please respond in the comments if you have any ways to work this out for me. Do they start experimenting on orcs to maybe start assimilating themselves back into like orc Necron hybrids? Or the same thing goes with like how I was saying with Tyranids. If there are Tyranids somewhere, do the Necrons capture Tyranids and start experimenting on them? Again, to try to become to become normal using Tyranid physiology. Because, like I said, I'm thinking the Imperium is gone, and I'm thinking there's way too few humanoids for the Necrons to work with. I think out of all of the races, the Tyranids and the Orcs would probably be the faster of the bunch to populate to a dominant force. Okay, so there was that. Again, this question could be answered in a book. Could be. I don't know. But I don't care. I just wanted to think about it. Are there any failed hive fleets for Tyranids? And if so, and by failed I mean like they couldn't get enough biomass. So those big, they travel through the warp or whatever, but they need to stop and they need to consume planets, suns, or whatever. They need to consume all this stuff because that's the stuff that gives them the energy to be able to propel their big bioships through space. What if there is a giant, not necessarily a high, not even, I won't even go as far as a hive fleet, but what if there's a giant dead hive ship floating in space, a Space Hulk equivalent of a Tyranid ship? You know, and what if some other race came upon it and assumed control? And when I started thinking about it, I started thinking about the movie Guardians of the Galaxy. I'm pretty sure some of you will have seen it. In Guardians of the Galaxy, they focus on Nowhere, which is a space station, but it's built inside the remains of a, what were they called? Centurion? Not Centurion. Celestial? Was that the right term? Celestial or Titan? Basically, this big cosmic being's head. It was a dead being, but it was basically, they used this gigantic skull type thing as this city slash space station. So, how cool would that be? That if somewhere GW put into the fluff that basically like a Star Trek Deep Space Nine equivalent of a Tyranid bio ship as a space station somewhere, or even just, you know, a rogue trader came upon it, and, you know, his crew and team were able to figure out the biomechanics of it, and basically were like, okay, this is going to be our flagship. Whatever ship they had is now stored in the loading bay or whatever equivalent. I think that'd be kind of neat. I'd like to figure out if that's even possible. Next question. And this is pointed to the 40K fans out there. Why do you call the Tau fish people? Really? Why? They have hooves. They have hooves on their feet. Fish don't have hooves. I can't even imagine that fish would evolve into something with a hoof. They call them fish people, by my estimate, just because the makers of GW started naming all of their vehicles and stuff off of aquatic animals, creatures, or aquatic themes. But in general, the people themselves, they're not fish. They have hooves. I would almost say they're closer to deer / goat people. And here's why. When I thought of this question, because I was like, I need a list of questions, I wanted to look up a little bit of research on hooves and hooved animals. So I found out that there are two types of hooved critters. In general, it's all one. It's like they have one giant collection name, and then those that have single hoof or single toes versus multi-toes type stuff. Like if you look at a horse hoof, it's just like a one toe. But like there are certain deer and certain other critters that have multiple toes of hooves. This one is called I believe it was called a roe deer, R-O-E, roe deer, and it basically had two front hooves. The picture was on its side, like the critter was laying like this when they took the picture, and he had two front hooves like this, and it had the, just like you'd expect the hoof to look, that thick bony material, and then they had this third soft hoof that was back here. Reminded me of like a dew claw on dogs' legs. So I was like, well, the Tau, I think, I don't have any of my Tau available right now, but the Tau, I want to say, have their fire warriors have like a hoof that's got a split. Now I don't necessarily know if that's just like supposed to be just a divot, or for lack of a better term, or if it's meant to be like they have two separate hooves and they're just closed together, and they just made the space on the model. But if you look at like their riptides and their battle suits, the robotic toes that they have on there are split into two big toes in the front and the little offshoot toe in the back. So that made me think: could they be closer to deer, like a crossbreed? Not a crossbreed, an ab-human, because like technically Ogrins are ab-humans. Ratlings are ab-humans. Could the Tau been a beast man, deer man type crossbreed? And like regular deer, or I say unlike regular deer that have like the long horse-like face with the long nose and long mouth or whatever. Imagine if you smushed that face. Like, here's my thought. Like, GW basically took a deer or a horse face and went, we're going to make it humanoid and we're going to flatten it. So the bones that make up a deer face or a goat or whatever, the part of the bones that come out like here to form the snout, we're going to flatten those. And those are going to become the ridges that are part of the brow on the Tau, so they have that little divot in the middle. It's basically the leftover skin pushing in. I don't know if I can, like, yeah, if I'm looking at my video feed to see, you see how I get that little crevice in the center of my forehead? That's what get the Tau, that distinctive divot right there. And then a deer nose and a goat nose have that. Yes, they have nostrils that are round, but they also have a much bigger, since it's a broader nose. I don't believe they have the septum. I think that's what this is called on us. They have a much broader opening for their nose to collect stuff. So if you flatten that, it basically flattens their nose out and widens it so they get that little crevice. So, there's my thought. Tau are not fish people. They're goat people or deer people equivalent. I don't know what deer have a name. I know like cows are bovine, so they could be like bovine people. Flat faces. But they're not fish people. They're not fish! Stop calling them fish. Silly. Like I said, not meant to be. Don't take this too seriously. Out of all the races in 40K, who do you think throws the best parties? I personally think it's orcs. Because the grim, dark future of the 41st millennium doesn't sound like a fun place. So we're going to go total, like, hypothetical here. Okay? Out of all the races, I think the orcs probably throw the best parties. The orcs have the parties that, in my opinion, would look like the frat parties that you see, like in Animal House, Revenge of the Nerds, any other like college, anything that you see in movies nowadays, where they show like those totally wild and crazy parties where just everyone's going crazy. The beach parties where they're I don't think I've seen a beach party movie since like the 70s. And yes, I am that old. But like, they'd be like, orcs would use their trucks and their buggies and their bikes, and they'd be doing crazy like Dukes of Hazzard things at the party because they're having such a great time. There'd be orky booze that they'd just be slamming. They'd have an orc band playing, and they'd have their mosh pit, and just orcs, while orcs, yes, they love to fight, but we're taking the fight out of it. So the orcs are just there, rah, total raging, kick-ass type party. That's what I picture. And I thought about it, okay, well, if that's what the orcs are doing, what's the Imperium doing? Well, Space Marines have no sense of humor. They don't party. You could technically argue, like, Space Wolves, since they're based off of Vikings, they, the whole, drinking mead, slamming the things together, it would technically, I guess, you could call that a party. But I don't necessarily see it. I think the orcs beat them. You know what I mean? You could call it a party. I would say like the Blood Angels being vampiric, they would have the regal type. We're all gonna get together and be talk about things in a very hoity-toity way. Dark Angels, they're monks. They don't party. They brew some wine and they feast. Salamanders, no idea. I don't know any salamander fluff. White Scars, they'd have races. They'd get on their bikes and they'd just start having races. Ultramarines would throw an Olympics. That would be their party. The regular Imperium, like the Imperial Guard, if they just celebrated a victory in a battle, they'd immediately go to church and go, "Oh, thank the Emperor for keeping me alive." But in general, I think the Imperium does not have enough of a sense of humor or a sense of fun. It's the fluff for the Imperium just basically makes everything feel so, it's a futuristic dystopia, our life sucks. Yeah, I think the Imperium would just they'd be terrible parties. The Eldar, we'll start with the Craft World Eldar. The Craft World Eldar, I picture, would have the parties of our 1920s, 1930s. Tucks and tails, beautiful, elegant gowns. The men would have the... Now, I know this is... I'm just trying to picture it here. Not that I think the Eldar would have facial hair, but, the equivalent of Mr. Moneybags from Monopoly with this thick walrus-like mustache, the monocle, the totally pristine coiffed hair, and just, this is such a fancy party. Let's have the caviar. That's how I picture a Craftword Eldar party. They would be bragging to each other about how rich they are and how pretty they look and what clothing designer are you wearing this evening? That equivalent. Dark Eldar, I really don't like thinking about it. But it would be a lot of goth music. I don't know. I think it'd be more like some of the stuff you see in the Hellraiser movies. Hellraiser. Let's say like a Hellraiser, Hostel, the Saw franchise, Cannibal Holocaust. Any of these like torture porn movies got together and threw a party. That's what the Dark Eldar would be doing. And they'd be on a stupendous amount of Dark Eldar drugs, listening to goth music and doing all this crap. No, not very. I can't picture that being fun. Necrons, they're asleep on their tomb world. No, they don't have a party. They're not human enough. The Imperium. Okay, here's an aspect of the Imperium. The Mechanicum. Those are the nerds. Those are the Mechanicum are the nerds of the 40K universe. If there was a party in the Imperium, the Mechanicum wouldn't be invited because they're the nerds. They'd be trying to create. They'd be sitting at their computer. They'd be the weird science of nerds. They'd be sitting there trying to create the ultimate woman on their computers because that would be fun for them. That's their idea of a good time. Like I said, Necrons, they're asleep on their tomb worlds. No. Tyranids are essentially space locusts, so they don't have a party. Tau, I'm going to use the term party loosely. Tau, I think, would have a buffet. It would be like, hey, come, on such and such dates, bring your family. Hey, you, bring your family. We're having a big get-together. Everybody bring a dish. And essentially they have the equivalent of like our Thanksgiving, except without the weird tension that you get when you haven't seen family in a long time. It's the greater good, come on in. Oh, yes, we have more tables. Come. Grab some Tau beer or whatever, and we'll sit and we'll watch Tau football or something, Not really a party, but a good lovey-dovey, we love ourselves so much because we're the greater good. Did I miss anybody? I don't think so. But yeah, I still think orcs have the best parties. Orcs are the ones that are going to basically be waking up the next day with an orky hangover after the orc police broke up a really raging party, going, oh, dude, man, that was so awesome. When's the next one? Oh, wait, we got to go to war. Wog! That's what I think. My last 40K question, and a lot of you are probably going to look at me very, very weird that I even thought of it. All right, here's the last 40K question. Do Space Marines have sex organs? Here's the reason why. Well, I don't really know why I thought of it, but for some reason it popped in my head. How are Space Marines created? They take the best of the best of the best from the humanoid population, and then they transform them into Space Marines. As far as we know, there are no female Space Marines. I want to say somewhere like in the Rogue Trader days from GW, they might have had a picture of a potential female Space Marines, but in today's current 40K universe, really the only females that we ever see are the Sisters of Battle. The females are relegated to being nuns with guns or we have the females in the Dark Eldar. Potentially, there's females in the Eldar because they're the Howling Banshees. But needless to say, for Space Marines, there's no real evidence that there are female Space Marines. And like I said, there could be a book out there that I haven't read. It's totally fine. I'm not looking for you to, this book on such and such. No, I'm just hear me out here with my thought. If Space Marines are created by being genetically modified humans, why would a Space Marine need a sex organ? So when you get transformed into being a Space Marine, they throw in a bunch of artificial organs that help create your mass and bulk you up. They give you like a second heart, second stomach, whatever. Would the scientists that helped create just basically go, we don't need that anymore. Snip! And I know a lot of you guys probably went when I did that. And you're probably thinking, well, you still need a penis to pee with. Not really. All you need is an opening for your urethra, which is where, in case you don't know, that's where your urine comes out. All you need is an opening for your urine to leave you. And I want to say that the power armor of Space Marines is the equivalent of like the still suits from the Dune universe. The still suits where basically you could pee and poop in your still suit, and the still suit would take it and process it so that way, you didn't have to worry about it. I want to say that the power armor has a similar technological ability to that. So the peeing and the pooping part isn't really the important. It's like if Space Marines aren't having sex, why do they need sex organs? Just a thought. It's a weird thought. I know. I'm weird that way. I get it. But I wanted to share my weirdness with you. There you go. So that's all I had for 40K. All right. So my next set of questions or thoughts are in the Star Wars universe. I am a huge Star Wars fan. I am not an obsessive Star Wars fan. I did not collect all of the extended universe books. I have a few books. I have a few of the comics from the 90s. I recently saw The Last Jedi. I went and saw it twice. I am one of the people that liked it. I know that there is a lot of problems in the plot and other things. I get it. But the problems did not ruin the film for me like they have for other people. And I am not saying you are wrong for disliking it. And as much as I hope that you say that I am not wrong for liking it. It's my opinion. I'm entitled to it, just as you are entitled to yours. So, here, after I saw The Last Jedi, it inspired me to rewatch the Star Wars films. So I burned through the original trilogies, and then I fast forwarded to the best parts of the prequels, the parts that I liked, essentially, and I'm about halfway through Rogue One. And then I'll watch Force Awakens again. But as I was watching it, and I had already thought of some of these questions for the 40K stuff, I was like, here's some random thoughts with Star Wars. And I'll throw this on the Random Thoughts video. I'm going to preface this first question with a little bit of a tangent. Going back to Empire Strikes Back, when on Dagobah, Ghost Ben Kenobi is telling Luke, what I told you was true from a certain point of view. When dealing with telling Luke that you said Vader killed my father, and yet Vader just told me he is my father. This was it was Jedi, not Empire. I apologize if I said Empire. And Kenobi says, well, what I told you was true from a certain point of view. I want you to think of that from a certain point of view comment, because this is where the certain point of view kicks in. Could there be people that look at the Jedi as terrorists? Now, I'm not saying people, yes, some of you are probably saying, well, of course, those people that side with the Sith or side with the Empire. This is going back to prequel time, when the Jedi were at the height of their power, but before the prequels actually show us the fall of the Jedi. Could there have been people out there that, through no fault of their own, I'll ignore prejudices, or I'll ignore the fact that there are planets probably so freaking remote They have no idea what a Jedi is. But in a more civilized locale, could there have been people that said the Jedi were terrorists? And it's going to be kind of an odd thought because I'm going to be mixing fictional thought processes with things that are happening in today's current climate in the world. Thanks to the prequels, we now know that Jedi recruited Jedi hopefuls very young as children. And then I believe it was the third prequel, Revenge of the Sith. I think that was the third one. When the clones are attacking the temple and Bail Organa is trying to get to the temple, presumably to talk to someone in power or with some kind of knowledge of, hey, what the hell's going on? And the clone troopers are about to turn on him and they say, go home. And all of a sudden, a young Jedi potential jumps out of the shadows and starts doing the whole flippity flip with the lightsaber that at first we all loved, but in my opinion, I got really tired of really quick. The whole flippity flip with his lightsaber, deflecting shots, taking out stormtroopers, and then poof, gets taken out by a clone trooper. And Jimmy Smits goes, no! Climbs back in his car and he runs away. Right then and there, bringing it to real times, that's the first showing of a paramilitary force. Because technically the Jedis were, while not official military, they were their own fighting force. They were warrior monks, for lack of a better term. But there was a teenager, fighting the battles against adults. And in today's climate, that could be relegated to terrorism because I apologize right now if I am stereotyping, but I am basing this off of the knowledge I have from either news, which could be biased. I appreciate that. I also know that a lot of my knowledge comes from movies, which is a fictional or stereotypical account of certain things. So if I'm going to offend anyone with this, it's not my intention. It's like I said, it's a random thought. In the Middle East, those of us in the U.S. are told that there are factions of bad people in the Middle East that have child soldiers. There are factions in Eastern Africa, I believe. I think it's Eastern Africa. My geography could be wrong, but I know it's Africa, that will kidnap children and force them to be child soldiers in this rebel or at least rogue-ish type military warlord type thing. So the Jedi had children not literally fight their battles, because yes, we saw Anakin kill the younglings, which for example's sake, we'll say are like 8 years old or younger in human terms. But when that teenager, and it was obviously a teenager, anyone that says that was an adult, I think you're missing George Lucas's point. I think Lucas specifically made it a point to show that it was someone who was young doing what he thought was right, protecting the temple. So I'm going with the idea that it was a teenager. You have child soldiers fighting to protect this order, this religious order. And the Jedi were known for, lack of a better term, taking children to train as a Jedi. I think that the fall of the Jedi, when that eventually takes place, there was probably a bunch of people that, while maybe the actual politics of the fall of the Republic sounded like a bad thing, I bet you there were people that actually were like, well, at least those Jedi are gone. You know? One of my friends, who's also a pretty diehard Star Wars fan, I don't like the word take when it comes to the Jedi with children. I am a purist when it comes to the Jedi. I want to believe, I should say, that as the Jedi went out to recruit, better term, I don't think they were just like doing their testing, and then if they found someone who fit what they required, I don't think they went up to the parents and said, you don't remember having a child, took the child and left. I want to believe that the Jedi went to these parents and basically said their sales pitch to basically convince the parents that yes, your son, daughter, whatever, your child has potential for greatness, and if we take them with this greatness, they will help bring peace and tranquility throughout the galaxy, yada yada yada. And I believe that there were some parents that said no, and the Jedi were like, "Are you sure?" "Yes, I'm sure." "No, you can't take my child." And the Jedi were like, "Thank you for your time. Go enjoy." Secretly telling, "Okay, we're gonna have to keep a track on Bobby Bobob on this backwater planet, because if he should ever fall to the dark side because he'll have no control, we might have a problem in the future." But otherwise, I want to say that they kept their distance once the parents said no. I think it'd be cool if you had the equivalent of Law and Order Special Jedi Unit type of TV show where you could actually have, Jedi policing things, and they find out that there's a rogue Jedi going around and basically mind-wiping parents because the dark side has him so paranoid. "We need to have these recruits. We need them. So I've been mind-wiping people." That'd be kind of a neat idea. But I want to believe that's not what Jedi did. Second thought. Okay, so next point. What were the Sith looking to really gain by being in control of the galaxy? Now, if you look on Wikipedia, or Wookiepedia as it's called, the general ideology behind the Sith were they wanted to, by using the dark side, they wanted to rule and conquer and rule the galaxy. Okay. For what ends? Just to say you're the boss? I don't get it. And I think it's the problem I have is the fact that in the real world, trying to put real world logic behind science fiction logic. It could just be as simple, I'm assuming it's meant to be the simple of these are the good guys, these are the bad guys. The bad guys want to enslave everybody. But again, I don't see the purpose. Because if you're ruling something as large as a galaxy, there's a lot of small parts that you need to be in control of. And even as an all-powerful Sith, there are certain things you can't foresee, can't control. I'll break it down on a smaller aspect. If a Sith was in charge of, say, a small village, we'll say anywhere between 200, maybe 300 people. That might be even a city or something. I don't know what the actual breakdown is. But regardless. All right, so you have this one person who's in charge through fear, through intimidation, through whatever. A non-good guy is in charge of this community of 200 to 300 people. What is he getting out of it? Well, he gets his ego stroked because he's in control of these 300 people. He's probably getting rich off of these people. He's taking the best of whatever goods they make or whatever goods they use for himself. Has the best house, the best car, whatever. Okay. I get that. And it's him manipulating and controlling these people. Very mafia-esque, very Godfather-esque, where just mentioning the name of this Sith will get you in, is potentially, if you say his name, he'll appear and you're a dead man, kind of thing like that. All right, so then let's bump it up. Say instead of being in control of a village, he tries to take control of something to the size of a country or a continent. Well, now you're only one guy, and you can't be everywhere at once. So you're obviously very popular, but you need to have some form of a government that you're going to be in charge of. And that government, no matter how easy or how simple you want it to be, will have many cogs turning and churning to make sure, because you can't just be like, I rule, and instantly things just work. No, you still need to rule, and you still have all these little intricacies about ruling that you need to work out. You need to collect the equivalent of taxes, because the things that you use to rule your kingdom, your galaxy or whatever, they're not free. Star Wars is not Star Trek. Star Trek in, I believe it was First Contact, the movie First Contact, Kirk explains to someone else who's not familiar with the Federation, because they basically did it was a time travel movie. Going back into the past, he had to explain that the Federation of humans, at least, they have evolved past the concept of needing currency in exchange for goods. It basically, humanity evolved to the point where money wasn't necessary. We wanted to explore. We wanted to make the human race better, and we wanted to make it better for everyone in the galaxy. So we no longer used money. We just knew, hey, we need this. You're trained to use it. You're going to make it for us, the whole, because that's what we need. And in Star Trek, apparently that works. It doesn't work that way in Star Wars. Star Wars, they talk about credits. They talk about whatever type of money the Hutts use in the first prequel, when they're gambling on the pod races. You know, the little flying guy won't take Imperial credits. There's various forms of money. So if you're running a government, even as a Sith, you need to make sure all the cogs are greased. And that way you and your control needs to be getting some kind of money. Because those TIE fighters cost money to make. It costs money to train the troops. It costs money to feed and clothe said troops, said officers, said whatever. And now you want to run the whole galaxy. Well, what are you... Pardon me. What, as a Sith, are you getting out of it? Are you just getting out of it like the whole, I'm just going to kick back and relax because I'm the one in charge? Really? That sounds the lamest reason. To me, that sounds so lame to take over something as large as the galaxy. To me, it would seem to make more sense that if a Sith wanted to be in control, he'd want it small or smaller than a galaxy, because there are so many things that could go wrong in the galaxy that a Sith Lord couldn't control. And it seems that, at least the way they are portrayed, Sith are all about, because Sith use the emotions to be, they use their emotions, where the Jedi try to not necessarily be Vulcan, for another Star Trek reference. They don't want, I don't think the Jedi want to eliminate emotions. They just don't let their emotions get the better of them. Where the Sith tend to use their emotions to feed the Force, to make them more powerful. So the Sith, based on that knowledge for me, make all Sith seem to be just very whiny. I want this, I want that. And just, I don't see why, or I don't see how by running a galaxy that you get what you want, other than the fact that you can say, I'm in charge, you do what I say, because reasons. Force lightning. I don't get it. I would even assume there's probably, in a galaxy, again, because a galaxy is huge, I picture a Monty Python scene. Some planet somewhere in some backward podunk area of the galaxy, there's a farmer or some rudimentary person on the planet, and the Sith Lord comes to check it out, and it's Monty Python going, "Who are you?" "I'm the Sith Lord, I rule you." "But I didn't vote for you." You don't vote for a Sith. It's like, well, how do you become Sith? You don't become Sith because some watery tot lobbed a lightsaber at you. It just doesn't seem to work. And I think the galaxy-wide conquest of Sith, as I've grown older, just doesn't seem to work for me anymore. Maybe I'm cynical, maybe. It's just, yes, it is still Star Wars. It's still just a fantasy type thing, but I'm not really getting the logic behind the desire of ruling a galaxy. No thanks. I'll just take this nice little kingdom over here, and I'll go rule my planet, and I'll, just leave me alone, because I'm a Sith. This is Force lightning. Alright, next. What comic book characters could cross over into Star Wars and be really cool still, even in a take an artist rendering and mash it together with their original artwork, but make it Star Wars-y-esque. And the first thing that came to mind was Deadpool. Deadpool, a former stormtrooper turned bounty hunter. You know, because bounty hunters are basically the mercenaries in Star Wars. So how cool would that be to have a Deadpool character in Star Wars? One of my other thoughts was I was a big collector in the 90s. And at that time is when Image Comics came out, and one of the first Image Comics I collected was Spawn. Spawn just looked so cool. I really dug his outfit. I think Spawn would be great as a Sith. You know, all of his powers inherently were magical, mystical in nature because they all came from the devil and from hell. So it just seems to fit. You know, having Spawn with a really badass looking red lightsaber, or even green. I would actually say green wouldn't even be bad for him either, just because he had the green eyes. Because his suit was like, what was it, black, red, silver, or at least an off gray maybe. But yeah, I know green is typically considered a good guy color, but just something that color wise just looks cool. Because there's too much red on him. He's already got the big ass red cape. And it's like giving him a red lightsaber doesn't. It's too much red. We need something. We need some other kind of color contrasting. So I think that'd be cool. Also, Batman. Batman wouldn't necessarily be a galaxy spanning good guy, but having Batman on Coruscant, you know, he doesn't fight the battles against the Jedi or the Sith, but you have somebody in some Star Wars-y city. Rich kid, parents are dead because of whatever, and he takes up the mantle of Bat something, or Minoc Man, I don't know, you know, silly, I know that's really weird, Minoc Man, but you know, yeah, but the equivalent of Batman in Star Wars. What other comic book characters do you think would look really cool being redrawn in a Star Wars-y costume and still fit within their persona? Like what being what they do could work. You know, I can't really think of many of, like, the X-Men. I can't think of any X-Men that would really fit. Wolverine, kind of. But again, I would fit Wolverine more with, like, he'd be like a bounty hunter. Because Wolverine, apart from not really being a team player, you know, he's got the claws, animal-like tendencies, but he's always been the lone wolf. So he wouldn't necessarily be, you know, I can't picture him as a different character. He'd be on his own, but it would be like, yeah, I can't, you know, no Cyclops. We don't need Cyclops. We don't need Jean Grey. Jean Grey would essentially be a Jedi. Rogue, no. Iceman, no. Angel, no. Magneto, Sith. There's just, yeah, and there's just certain characters that don't fit well, but you could, you know, Captain America. I think Captain America would actually be a cool selling point for the Imperium, not the Imperium, the Galactic Empire. You know, like right now, I think in comics it was, what if Captain America was a Hydra agent in disguise? You know, Captain America equivalent for the Galactic Empire. Super soldier that just kicks all kinds of ass and is the hero that the people underneath the thumb of the Empire look up to aspire to, because he's the one defeating the rebels. Because really, in general, the Galactic Empire are the ones who are in power, and if you have a rebellion, that means there's something going on that's bad. So having this hero being, you know, using with propaganda and other types of media control that I'm sure the Galactic Power would have, they could really manipulate the masses into getting behind this Captain America type stormtrooper. That'd be kind of interesting. Nick Fury would probably fit. He could be like a Grand Moff. Maybe a rebellion general working alongside Leia. and Dodonna and all those other generals. That'd be kind of neat. But yeah, what other? Can you think of any other comic book heroes or even comic book villains that would fit in the Star Wars universe and doing what? You know, that'd be kind of cool. And my last thought, because okay, so we know for Star Wars, since Disney bought it, we pretty much know that there's going to be Star Wars films coming out as often as Disney can throw them out. This year we had Last Jedi. Next year, I believe, is the Solo standalone film in 2018. And then in 2019, it is their schedule is to have Episode 9 in 2019, helmed by J.J. Abrams. And then after that, Episode 9 is the last of the episodic Star Wars films. So it's basically, we had our prequels, we had our core trilogy, and we're going to have our epilogue trilogy with The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and whatever they call number 9. After that, it's going to be, here's a movie set in Star Wars, but it'll probably be like, it'll be new characters, or I would say, I know maybe potential trilogies in the future, but it's not going to have the characters that we have grown up to love and or hate. They're supposed to be, relatively original, for lack of a better term. And it is Hollywood, so Hollywood does repeat. They've rebooted Spider-Man how many times? They've remade certain movies like the Magnificent. Is it the Magnificent? Is it the Dirty Dozen or the Magnificent Seven? I think it's the Magnificent Seven. That's based off of the Seven Samurai. But it was like the Seven Samurai was one movie. Then there was the Magnificent Seven. And then there was another movie that remade the Magnificent Seven as a new movie. And then recently we just had Denzel and Chris Pratt do another Magnificent Seven. So we know Hollywood is going to churn out similar concepts regardless. So my thought was, what maybe genre-specific movie or what other style of movie would you want to see put in the Star Wars universe? The first one I came up with is an actual noir film. I am not a huge fan of the classic, like the black and white films, but those films of the early in the early 1900s inspired so many of our current hero directors like Spielberg, Lucas, Scorsese, Francis Ford Coppola. They look back at these classic films with Humphrey Bogart, with Hepburn, Spencer Tracy, all these, Jimmy Stewart, all these classical films. They look at them and go, yeah, they're inspired by that, and they want to bring that feeling into their films. So to me, I thought it'd be cool having a black and white noir Star Wars film. And I kind of wanted to tweak it just a tiny bit so that it would be almost like Robert Rodriguez when he did Sin City, basing it off the comic book, where it was all black and white with splashes of color, mainly red, but a little bit of yellow or whatever. But basically having an actual noir film with your hero who could, I don't think it would do the story good to have him be a Jedi, but you could at least have a Jedi in the background as a secondary character. But have your actual hero be like a private eye equivalent in Star Wars. You have your femme fatale. You have your wholesome girl that the protagonist wants, and then you got your antagonist, your criminal mastermind, who's trying to basically knock off the guy. He's basically trying to stop the good guy, the protagonist, from solving the crimes or whatever. Black and white with splashes of color. Meaning that, I'm assuming that at some point the Jedi, or if the bad guy was a Sith, the Jedi or the Sith, their lightsabers would be the splash of color. Some other dramatic effect that you could throw in the various colors for decorative purposes. I don't really see this as a space game or a space movie. I think it would be best if it was self-contained on its own planet and you just have this policeman, private eye, whatever, trying to solve a mystery on this one planet, city, whatever. But But I think that'd be cool. An actual going back to the old black and white noir films to have. Yeah, I think that'd be cool. The other one I thought would be good is a James Bond, Jason Bourne style movie. So if you're gonna put it in, if you want to not necessarily make the Empire a, you don't want to make the Empire sympathetic, but you could follow behind one of its operatives, and the operative could be the equivalent of the hero, because technically the Empire was in power at the time, and they're the ones trying to make themselves look like we're the good guys. The rebels suck. So you could have an imperial agent provocateur going out and doing its business. That'd be kind of neat, And then it's like, because it's space, a space opera, pardon me. You already have the James Bond gadgets. Boba Fett had like his wrist launcher, his rocket backpack. Just the fact that it was a jetpack backpack. Hello. You got, instead of it being like this weird gadgety stuff from the old school James Bond, and they kind of dropped it with the Daniel Craig version because it got kind of corny after a while. It's Star Wars, and you already have those weird gadgets, and they already exist in this weird universe, so they fit. You could bring those corny gadgets back and make this character be either if you wanted the rebellion to be the heroes, your rebellion agent provocateur could basically be going out and he's like so stoic, so hard-boiled that he's forgotten what it's like to be human. He's lost touch. He's losing touch with humanity, because for him it's just a matter of, it's the next mission. I gotta go kill the bad guys, go have sex with some hot alien chick, whatever. Or you're like, you do just Jason Bourne-esque or Transporter-esque. Transporter would be good too, where you're a smuggler, ducking and weaving the guys who are trying to set him up, blah blah blah. But yeah, and then the last one I thought would be like gangster, Goodfellas, Godfather, Casino. Basically anything that had Joe Pesci, Robert De Niro, directed by Scorsese. Let's throw a gangster flick, and not Hut gangsters. I'm sorry. The Huts are stupid gangsters. They're big slugs. They're stupid. They looked cool when Return of the Jedi came out, when Lucas wanted to fix his, do the special editions. Jabba was cool because he was the first time we saw him. Big, bloated gangsta. Get it. I get it. But then they made him this silly-looking slug in the remaster, and then when they brought him out for the first prequel in the race, it was just even dumber. I'm like, it just took the badassness of the Huts, took it away. Give me an actual bipedal alien or even humanoid Godfather type, and let's watch how the mafia Hut gangster type world evolves in the Star Wars universe, because now we got to deal with Jedi, we got to deal with whatever police force. Who do you bribe? Who do you deal with? Let's figure that out. I think that'd be kind of cool. If you have any other suggestions of what would fit in a Star Wars universe, or what you could do to convert a movie concept into the Star Wars universe for a spin-off, I'd like to hear it. I'd love to have that kind of discussion. But yeah, that was basically my last thought of Star Wars. Little random thoughts that popped up here or there. So I'll call this video complete. This video is done, and yeah, well, hopefully I will see you in 2018. Hopefully with some new battle reports, with some more random chatter, and hope you guys have a happy new year and happy gaming.